When it comes to online instruction, create, don't convert. I'm Heather Johnson, an associate professor at the University of Colorado at Denver. I've been teaching online since 2014. I've developed and taught 4 fully online asynchronous classes, 1 methods of math teaching, and 3 math teacher education courses. While my comments relate to online teaching in general, the examples that I give are going to be specific to asynchronous online teaching. And so the first thing is, when teaching online, I'm not trying to replicate something that I could do in a face-to-face class. Rather, I'm intending to create a different kind of experience entirely that leverages the affordances of the online space. The best analogy that I've heard in relationship to this was something that Sam Otten, a professor at the University of Missouri, talked with me about at the Psychology of Math Education North America PMENA conference back in 2018. And Sam talked about live theater versus modern day movie making. And if we only think about movie making as just a real-time recording of live theater, we aren't really taking advantage of all the capabilities that are possible with movie making. And so similarly, if we think about online instruction as just a recreation of face-to-face instruction, we're also not taking advantage of the opportunities that online can afford. And so while this analogy can sound nice, how is it that we can actually create an online learning experience that can achieve some of the goals that we might have? And so I have 3 questions in mind that help me to start to think about this. The first being, kind of typical question of instruction: what is it that I want students to learn? And the second question that I have is, how can I curate a learning experience that takes advantage of the online space and yet doesn't rely on real-time feedback or interactions with my students? And then the third thing is kind of a feasibility question, whereas how can I do this without creating something that's really text heavy, where it's just all readings and all navigating along strings of text? And so one of the ways that I think about this when I use the word curate, it makes me think about a museum experience, where if I go to a museum, there might be certain exhibits that I want to make sure that I see, but the way that I engage in the museum experience is really up to me. So as someone who goes to a museum, I've got a lot of agency in how I might encounter it. And yet, if I am wanting to create something where I can help people learn from that, there might be some specific things within that visit I want people to see or demonstrate that they're able to do. My colleagues and I wrote an article briefly titled Teaching Playgrounds, where we used an analogy of a playground to think about it as a learning experience. And when I think about playground, there's all different kinds of equipment, there's all different kinds of opportunities, and we can create a space that leverages all those different kinds of opportunities to help students learn something. And the way that we thought about this playground space was really in 4 parts, with an introduction, an investigation, a reflection, and a response. And so I might introduce an online space with a video talking about what some of the learning goals are, what that I hope people are able to take from it, some of the kinds of things that I want them to be able to do, some things that they can look for, and also just to give people a chance to have a feeling where we're humans engaging in this, where it's not just me and the screen. And then an investigation. And this can be a variety of things, whether it's classroom videos or it's an interactive that's online, perhaps from Desmos or from NCTM Illuminations or from GeoGebra. And then there's a reflection. It's, how do I want people to engage with this? And I think a lot about that from the teacher noticing literature, where it's, we don't just hope that people notice something. We can provide a specific kind of prompt where people can engage in this. And then also a response, which is evidence of that learning. So then to give a specific example from this, one of my favorites, which we talk about in the article, is an activity called freeze frame. And for those of you who this brings an earworm to, yes, it is complete with lyrics from the song from the J. Giles Band. So what people do in this activity is they watch a video of teaching and then take a screenshot. And the example that we give is a screenshot of an instance of formative assessment. And I particularly liked this one because the instance of formative assessment was a video where mostly students were featured rather than the teacher. And then once they had an opportunity to do the screenshot, to give a title for what they observed and also an explanation of how they noticed formative assessment in this episode of teaching. And I use this as an example of a way to think about how we can create a space where our students have an opportunity to navigate things, to go deeper, to think further, but also that we as instructors have a baseline of what do we hope people will engage in and what do we want them to demonstrate with this experience. And really, it's a learning experience for all of us. As I think about some things when I engage with this, first, we've got to recognize the limitations of our own students' devices that they may have. So not all students have access to the newest, latest devices. And being able to think about how experiences might work, perhaps on a phone or different kinds of devices. And then also thinking about, just as we're learning with online spaces, helping our students to navigate the technology of online. So when I talked about the screenshot example and the freeze frame activity, we also provided students with directions, a link to a website that just talks about taking a screenshot. And then also, as I think about all of this, is really some advice that we've gotten from our college, our School of Education and Human Development, has been to simplify, to keep it as simple as we can, and also thinking about giving ourselves grace. So we're all engaging in something that we're working to do the best we can with what we have, and remembering that we're humans in this experience. And it's been awesome for me to have a chance to engage in a different kind of learning space over these couple of years. And I had the advantage of more time to plan and get ready for them, but also just sharing some ideas that we have to engage others in learning the space and thinking about this as opportunities where we can grow together.